So we got a clip to play, but before we jump into it, the situation is this. Child poverty has doubled in the past year. And we're going to provide some context for it, but I want to bring your attention to this clip on the Fox Propaganda Network with Harris Faulkner, one of the most prominent Fox propagandists. So let's play the clip, and then we will unpack it together.
From under 8 to more than 12%. The child poverty rate, and this is one that really jumped out at me, has more than doubled during that same time. Not only is he wrong, he's hurting people, particularly children, with his policies. Marie.
Well, he's actually passed legislation to help reduce child poverty, which most Republicans voted against. So we have to be honest about the facts here. You can find lots of facts and figures on both sides here. Wages are outpacing inflation. We have the lowest inflation rate among the G7. Can we stay with the children for just a second,
though? Because they can't get jobs. So the wages don't matter to the children who are now doubled numbers from what they were in poverty. And it is lipstick on a pig if you tell me that you want to blame Republicans and anybody else.
They vote against it,
Harris. But Biden.
They vote against legislation that helps children get out of poverty. That's just a fact. And so, look, I will agree, though, that there is still economic pain out there. And so the Biden team has as their job to make the case to the American people why these numbers that in many cases are good, not all, why they are better than what the alternative would be if Donald Trump is reelected.
So, Luke, before I turn it over to you, I just want to provide some context. The legislation in question is the enhanced child tax credit that was passed as a provision of the American Rescue Plan, which was President Biden and the Democrats' first major piece of legislation after President Biden was inaugurated back in 2021. It cut child poverty in half, took it from about 10% down to 5%. And then at the end of 2021, it was supposed to be renewed. But all 50 Senate Republicans and one conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, failed to renew it. They blocked the provision from being renewed. And as a result, in 2022, it went from about 5% back up to 12%. And in that context, Harris Faulkner is just disingenuously trying to blame President Biden for that. So with all that in mind, what do you think?
I've said lots of times to my audience that for some reason, and it helps me a lot doing this job, I have a default positive approach to a lot of stories that aren't positive. And that's why I can have a lighthearted tone in covering a lot of stories that actually have devastating ramifications when it comes to the current MAGA Republican Party and all the different things we talk about. On this, I can't feel anything other than Josiah. A whole lot of rage because she is on the network. She's on the network that's covering for day after day the party and telling the lies that helps the party get away with this. That is to blame for that stat. This isn't, oh, I'm just trying to help the person that I think is good politically and I'm just trying to be biased because of partisan. This is factual information based on the child tax credit. It's not a coincidence that these numbers shot up after it was failed to be renewed. It cut child poverty in half. And then because of Republicans and, as Josiah mentioned, a conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, it was then allowed to end that enhanced child tax credit. And so to look at those facts and then on national TV mislead your viewers into thinking that getting Biden out of office would be the solution to something that if he had his way, we would not be seeing that spike because we would have the enhanced child tax credit. It's sick. And as my audience knows, normally I'm a happy guy who's pretty calm about most things. And this one drives me crazy because it's the peak of dishonesty, which we see all the time. What we don't always see is that peak of dishonesty being the reason for the very pain that is the subject of the dishonesty.
Yeah. Well, it's also targeting the most vulnerable among us. Like the Republican Party, obviously, especially its leaders, obviously that's who I'm talking about, but they have a predilection towards picking on already marginalized and vulnerable groups. This is America's children. And I covered this story on my channel, Pondering Politics, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics, by the way, earlier today. And the thing that I got thinking about, it's like, it's not just affecting, it would be bad enough, Luke, if this effort were just hurting children in blue states or children of Democratic families, but it's not. What these 50 Senate Republicans and one conservative Democrat did was they also hurt the children in red states, the children of Republican families. It's hurting everybody. And it would be one thing if Harris Faulkner and other Fox propagandists wanted to blame Joe Manchin. Like if they really wanted to like slide in a dig at the Democratic Party, they could at least take some of the blame and pin it on Joe Manchin because he did contribute to it. But she has nothing to say about the Republican Party. She says it's putting lipstick on a pig to point out the fact that 50 Senate Republicans prevented the president from renewing this enhanced child tax credit. And it's hurting America's children. So then it's like, as we head into an election year, is there really a choice if you have children or if you have nieces and nephews or whatever? I mean, if you are considering the situation for the next generation, is this not like an even more clear-cut choice electorally than it was? Like if you want to support children, if you want to take children out of poverty, sounds like you should vote Democrat.
Absolutely. And I've gone through this so many times, but I want to continue to, because sometimes we have these conversations about Democrats, Republicans, and forget to specify the policies that we're talking about. When Democrats had the White House, as they still do, but then a majority in the House and in Senate, this is what we got. American Rescue Plan, first major gun safety bill in decades, largest investment in green energy in history, pulling out of America's longest war, lowering prescription drug costs, Medicare being able to negotiate drug prices, capping the cost of insulin at $35 out of pocket per month, raising the minimum wage for federal government workers, massive impact, Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court, PACT Act, Chips and Science Act, once in a generation infrastructure law, including rebuilding roads and bridges, increasing access to clean, reliable drinking water, repairing airports, expanding broadband, investing in passenger rail, and many other things. That is what we're supposed to get from our leaders. Those are the at least attempted solutions to actual problems being faced by people. What have we gotten from the GOP in recent memory that solves problems?
I was going to say, now, Luke, to be fair, under the Republicans, we got 50 miles of a useless border wall at the southern border. We did get a $2 trillion tax cut for the uber rich that, by the way, and here's the other funny part, which ties in quite nicely to this story about the lack of enhanced child tax credit. Those same Republicans that blocked the enhanced child tax credit, which again cut child poverty in half, they want to renew the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which will cost the federal government $3.5 trillion. So that's the other thing, man. That's like they have no money in their pockets when it comes to lifting children out of poverty. But when it comes for the tax cuts for the uber rich, we can swipe the credit card 100%.
And then they turn around and say, it's socialism and tyrannical somehow, which is the type of language we heard about the American Rescue Plan, where this enhanced child tax credit was implemented, or possibly before as well. I might be missing.
There was the tax credit technically pre-existed. It was actually in the Trump era COVID stimulus, which was again overwhelmingly bipartisan. President Biden enhanced the tax credit further. It was up to $300 per child
in the American
under the American right,
Gotcha.
And that is what cut child poverty in half.
Right, and so that was called socialist spending. That's horrible. We're gonna go bankrupt, even though meantime Biden's able to be cutting the deficit, but. Then they have plenty of money in their pockets, like you're talking about, when it comes to further enriching their wealthy friends. We could go on forever, but any last thing before we go to the next story?
No, just other than, again, as we head into this election year, it's for your people in your audience and people in my audience, but especially we need to get this message out. Again, if you're thinking about the next generation, if you have children, if you want to have children, if finances are also a consideration, and they probably should be, this is another incentive to vote blue in the next election cycle. We have to expand the Democrats' majority in the Senate with moderate or ideally progressive Democrats, not conservative Democrats that would block this measure. We got to retake the House, and we got to reelect President Biden so we can renew the child tax credit and hopefully not just cut child poverty in half again, but even take it further.
And a country, I'll close on this, a country as wealthy as the United States, if we managed the way that we allocate our resources, childhood poverty doesn't have to be a thing. That is a policy decision. We saw that with cutting it in half. What's to keep us from cutting it all the way down to zero? Thank you so much for watching. For the outro on this video, I want to plug Josiah's channel. Hit them with it, Josiah.
Hey, everybody. I appreciate you watching. You can find me at youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. One word, pondering politics. If you like progressive commentary that focuses on coalition building with other elements of the left and calling the Republican Party out for what it's become, I hope you'll view my channel. Give me a like and subscribe and some feedback. Again, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. Thanks again.